All right, let's go. If you're tired of not feeling fit, tired of just not having a focus, tired of just not having the financial resources that you deserve, this is your place to be. I'm Jason Yarusi, and this is the Lou 100 podcast, the place you come to break the habits that no longer serve you so you can build the momentum to get the life that truly is what you desire. So before we get started, you can always go over to jasonyarusi.com. There's a free assessment there. Just take that assessment. It answers a few questions of yourself that you can just say, okay, that's where I am. This is my starting line. So we can really dive into where you're starting to get to where you want to be. And today we're talking about the master of influence. And you think about this when we think about influencing, right? We think of persuasion, right? Many times it gets a bad rap, right? Well, if I'm going to persuade someone, I'm going to get over on them. But many times we miss that the actual conversation we're having with someone is that we're not getting the results that we want. It's usually because we're coming at it in the wrong way. So I wanted to talk on 3 different principles today: ethos, pathos, and logos. And if you haven't heard of these terms before, ethos is building credibility or to end, while pathos is tapping into your emotion, and logos is driving decisions based on logic. And if that really sounds foreign to you, most of the time we come at it in one way. And what really hurt me when I was starting out and getting going is that I always talk to people in the terms of how I was thinking of things, right? So I would give, if I was leading, right, if I was in a management position or something else, I was always talking to people in the direction that was understanding to me, right? I wasn't talking to them on ways that may impact them, because we have 70,000 thoughts a day. And when you go through that and you think about that, is that many people think in many different ways, right? So the way I'm thinking is not the way my wife thinks, is not the way my kids thinks, even though that we're all together, right? We all think through things in different fashions. So I may come from something that I'm thinking based on, emotion, where my wife may be driven by logic, and then, others may be driven by just the credibility that one brings off. And right. And if we're all talking on different wavelengths, then it's going to be hard to us to cross lines that are going to get us to a common result. So think about this, right? When you think of ethos, right, the power of credibility, you think about credibility and trustworthiness. And as we were building our business, right, we had to rely on what we had done in the past, right? So when we went out to first raise money, right, we didn't go to just all, we didn't go on Facebook, didn't go on social media and just go start talking to people that were just out there in the universe, because who am I, right? They don't know who I am, right? And so when you think of these mega influencers out there, the people that are out there and have a big platform, well, they've gotten that platform and that gives them the edge of credibility. But when you're starting out and you don't have that platform, you don't have that backdrop, you don't have the ability to just use that as a resource, you have to think about what can you rely on. So when we first started talking out, we made a list of all of our friends and family and all the people that were in our network, and we went to talk to them, because although we had not done, the acquisition of a large apartment before, we were able to talk to them about what we wanted to do to acquire these large apartment buildings, why we thought it would be a great investment for them, and what we had done in the past, right? They knew us from our other business successes. They knew us from how we'd shown up, whether we, knew them, through past businesses or just even in school or just, in sports, right? Just how we had shown up in the past. Like, that's what we had to rely on. So their basis for thinking of our credibility and our trustworthiness is just how we had shown up in the past. And so we were able to build a platform to be able to raise capital based on the the credibility and the trustworthiness that we had built, right? So when you think about this, it's that this became our track record in commercial real estate and running multiple businesses. Like, that helped us to expand to now raising somewhere probably about $60 million. So you think of that started with one conversation, but the credibility, the trustworthiness that was built over time, was built on what we had done in the past. So when we talk to people, we think and we talked on our power of credibility, right? Well, next is the power of just the emotional connection, the pathos. It just, you think of someone who, I remember having a conversation with someone and his dad, right when we had just the big financial collapse, right? He had all his money in a 401k and basically his portfolio collapsed. And at that point, the father was so, just heartbroken over that and just so dismayed. And just shortly after that, whether connected or not, he passed away. right? So there was this person, he had all of this bad energy of just having his money tied into the stock market where something could just happen in this financial world. Just all these bad things could happen that were outside of his control after you worked so hard and just put all this effort and put all this energy into what you have done your entire life to put this money away. And then in 1 second, overnight, because of the actions of others who tried to take advantage of the system, your money was taken and gone. Well, he never wanted to be in that position again where he just gave his money out and put his money into the system and just hope for the best. And so when he came into the world to be able to invest as a limited partner, right, what stood out to him is that, he can invest in an asset, right? And with that asset, it could have many different ways for him to get cash flow, to get tax benefits, to get depreciation, right? So he wasn't stuck relying on the system. He was getting something that was a physical asset he could go out there and touch and be an investor in them. So that personal emotional story connected with them, because you could just remember how his parents, how his dad felt just at those days after, when just all of the hard work had just disappeared overnight. And I'm sure we've each had those moments, right? Those emotional moments where something has not gone our way, right? And so we're making a decision based on emotion, based on a feeling, based on how we either want something to happen or how we want to not have something happen, right? We're making that decision about the emotional connection of what's right for us. So you have to think about, when you're having a conversation with someone, like what is the leverage of storytelling that you can connect with them on, right? So we get back to the credibility, right? That's just, we're talking about practical advice about how we've built our own credibility, right? How we had done these things in the past, and whether it was in careers or personal or fitness, right? In fitness, I'd run a bunch of marathons, I'd run 100-mile races. So people want to talk about long distance running, I have the backdrop. That's my credibility. But in the emotional connection, right, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking to what is going to create that deeper connection with my team, with my audience, with my clients, right? Because I could just say, hey, I got my credibility, right? But someone needs that emotional impact to understand that either what they're being drawn to or what they're being drawn away from, right? So what is it that you can do to leverage storytelling within yourself, within your network, within your community to help drive forward, of course, the narrative? And then lastly is logos, the power of reasoning, right? It just gets back to the analytical approach for real estate. If you buy a property at a good price, right, and you're able to do certain amount of improvements, right, with those improvements, you're able to drive up rental rates, which creates more revenue, which ultimately, at the same time, are moderating expenses, is going to create a bigger bottom line, which in fact is going to make the property more valuable and produce more cash flow that's going to be able to hit those certain returns. Well, there's a certain person that you speak to that just wants to get to the numbers, that wants to get to the point. If I'm going to invest here, what is the rationale and the reasoning for why I'm going to meet and get the returns that you have put into your investment summary, right? So there's that logic, that reasoning, right? It just, you have to have the ability that you build the credibility, right? For which we have. You give the story of why this is going to be a great investment, but then you have to have the logic and the reasoning for why this is actually going to hit the numbers that we put into our packet, right? So you have to bring it all together. You have to think about this when I'm talking with someone. Am I just going at it straight from a point of just emotional all day? Because if it is, then you're missing the person that needs to hear, the understand the credibility, or have the logic and the reason for why this is going to make sense to them. So when you talk to an audience, right, if you're just talking to one person or you're talking to a person of one, right, you have to make sure to touch on these points to understand what they really need to connect with you. But especially if you're talking to an audience, you're talking to a team, that you have to drive forward the credibility, the emotional connection, and the reasoning behind why this is happening. That's the power of the ethos, the pathos, the logos, right? It gives you the opportunity to add mastering persuasion to your quiver, right? You go back there and you pull out, okay, I really need to hammer home on this group, right? If you're talking to a bunch of accountants, right, and you're talking to them about your business or other points, that you might have to be very logical in your reasoning right there. They might not have that emotional connection, right? But if you go into another group, right, it may be really driven on the emotional need. That's where you really have to tone it. So you have to make sure that you're pulling it all together. So look at what you do, how you connect with people, how you go out there to talk with people, and apply these, right? Think about this. Like, do I really push forward just on the credibility aspect, or just on the point of logic, but I'm missing the storytelling? Being a masterful storyteller is powerful beyond means. We all get drawn into the stories. You see people lean closer, right? And it makes you feel connected. But there has to be some logic and some reasoning and some credibility backed with that here. And this is what you can get to just go and push yourself forward to basically perform at a higher level. So think about yourself today. How are you showing up in the world? What is it that you can do to just be better at mastering the influence that you can have on others? And this can be for many things, right? I was talking with someone that was, going out there and fundraising the other day, and they're all on, the logic of why you have to do this. But if you can add in just the feeling about like what these funds will do, how this will help, how this will, benefit the community, how this will help this particular, group really take the next level to help so many more out there. Think about the power beyond that. Now think about how that translates to you today. Think about whether it be just, within your family, within your kids, right? It may help you just identify more with your family. If you're not just looking at it from my logical perspective, like this is the logical reason you should do this. How can that help you have a bigger, stronger connection with those around you? Okay. Hope you found this valuable today. If you did, go down there and leave us an honest ratings review. It helps us connect, helps us get out to more people. We continue to see this podcast grow because of you. And we want to thank you. Let's do this.